We're going to begin this edition of Harvey's Hot Takes with Bryan Hayes, with a team Bryan is very familiar with. He talks about them every single day on TSN Radio in Toronto. That would be the Maple Leafs. A team, Bryan, that has basically featured the same core players for the last 8 years. What's it going to take for them to get over the hump and get a little further in the postseason this year?
It's the never-ending question, Jay. And I have 3 ways this is going to change. Okay, I'm going to begin. You mentioned that core that continues to come back. There is one guy that is separate from the rest, and that's Auston Matthews. Now he's the captain of this team. He's the highest paid player in the league. That will last for 1 year. Then Leon Draisaitl will hop in front of him. Eventually, McDavid will move that bar even further up. He's the best goal scorer in the world. He may be the greatest American-born player ever. He might be the greatest Leaf ever. It is time for him in his 9th season to drag this team to the promised land. I think he's been covered by the core 4. Fortunately for him, he gets dragged in with Marner, with Nylander, with Tavares. He is separate. When Edmonton does great things, it's McDavid, then Draisaitl, then the rest. When Pittsburgh does great things, it's Sidney Crosby, then Malkin, then the rest. In Colorado, it's McKinnon, then Makar, then the rest. It should be the same thing here in Toronto. This team has not been able to score in the playoffs. He is the best goal scorer in the world. He may go down as the greatest goal scorer of all time. That does not apply in the playoffs. He is simply not an elite goal scorer in the playoffs. It is long overdue. It has to happen this year. Throw this team on your back if you're Auston Matthews. Score big goals, be clutch, drag them to the promised land. Number 2, Joseph Woll is a big part of this as well. Homegrown goaltender. It's the one position that can quite literally win this for you, right? It's not going to win you a Stanley Cup, but it can quite literally win you around. 4 great starts, like Swayman's had in the past, like Bobrovsky, like Vasilevsky. These are simply goalies within this division. Joseph Woll is capable of that if he stays healthy. Not just the regular season, but also the postseason. Goaltending in and of itself can be a game breaker. It's tough to rely on. It's asking a lot, but it's the nature of the position. And the third thing is they need to do something unique in the regular season, Jay. They actually have to put their foot on the gas game 1 and floor it through game 82 and win the division. Better yet, win the conference. Boston's done it. Florida's done it. Tampa's done it. The Leafs never do it. They always are in that middle ground where they're playing Boston in the first round, playing Tampa in the first round. A lot of times they're starting on the road. Do yourself a favor in the regular season. Don't lose games to San Jose. Don't lose games to Chicago and the worst teams in the league like they always do every single year. Be a serious team. Be a veteran team. Win your division and get the wild card in the first round. Get a team that sneaks in, that's happy to be there, blow their doors off in the first round, and take it from there. So Auston Matthews, do your thing. Joseph Woll, do your thing. And the team in itself, take the regular season seriously. Don't just start thinking how you prepare for the playoffs. Put yourself in a better position for when you get to the playoffs.
We're going to go from a team with Stanley Cup aspirations to the rebuilding side of the National Hockey League. There are several teams in early to mid stages of an NHL rebuild right now. We're talking about the Chicago Blackhawks, the Montreal Canadiens. We've got a whole series on Crave about Montreal's rebuild. Philly, Calgary, San Jose, just to name a few. Out of those ones I mentioned, and maybe there's one off the board you like, Bryan, which of those rebuilds does the NHL need to be most successful, in your opinion?
Montreal, and it's not close. Montreal. Montreal is, alongside Toronto, those are the co-capitals of hockey, not only in this country, but around the world. Those are the 2 pillars of this league, Toronto and Montreal. And Montreal has missed the playoffs 3 years in a row, Jay. They have never in their history missed it 4 years in a row. That is going to happen. They are going to miss the playoffs this year, but they've got to get this right and they've got to get going. It is such an important market for this league because of the unique coverage, English and French. It's so important in that city throughout the province because of the illustrious history. The Bell Center is a cathedral. There's no better place in the league to go watch a game. They've got to get this right. And a lot of times this term gets thrown out. The league is better when this team is competitive, when that team is competitive. And a lot of times that term is abused. You know, it's like Utah Hockey Club. Got to have them being competitive. No, we don't. You know, it's better league when New Jersey's competitive. Wrong. It's not. That's completely irrelevant. It is when Montreal is competitive because of their history, because of what they represent. And they've got to take a big step this year. And I think Marty St. Louis in particular is in the crosshairs here. I think he's done a really good job wearing kid gloves, right? The last couple of years when he's been there, it's about growth. It's about good vibes. It's about trying to get the right habits going for them to take that next step. It is very difficult to be a coach in any sport that wears the kid gloves, that is there when they tear it down, when they're rebuilding, when they're blowing it up, to take the next step into the competitive years. And I'm really curious to see how Marty's going to do that. But I think the Montreal Canadiens, I was in Montreal a couple of weeks ago for the President's Cup. There's so much buzz for the kids, for the rebuild. They've bought into it. It's such an incredible hockey market. And Philly's a good market. Chicago's a good market. They've got Bedard, but nothing compares to Montreal. They've got to get this right. They've got to get going. And I think it's imperative for the league for that to happen, and certainly for Canadian hockey, because it is a better league when the Habs are competitive.
And if you do want to watch more about this Habs rebuild, that series on Crave is absolutely terrific. So get Crave for that. I'd like a Stanley Cup pick before you go. Bryan, are you going to follow the hottest trend in hockey media right now and pick the Edmonton Oilers to win the Stanley Cup? Because basically all of your colleagues have done that at this network and at the other network and at pretty much every hockey. But everywhere that covers hockey is picking Edmonton. Are you following suit?
No, I'm going the other way. All right, I have to be a contrarian here, and I understand why everyone's picking Edmonton, of course. And the odds are saying pick Edmonton, and they're a very good team. I didn't realize they were the Kansas City Chiefs, in a dynasty. I didn't realize they've won 2 straight cups, and you have to pick them. It does seem like everyone's just leaning into that. But I'm going with the Dallas Stars, okay? I'm going off the board here a little bit. I'm going with the Dallas Stars. I think Peter DeBoer is this year's Paul Maurice. Really good guy, really captivating interview, really good coach that's been around the league. And I think he's got a pulse for things down there. And the league right now is basically built on who are your 6 to 8 best forwards, who are your 3 or 4 best defensemen, and do you have a superstar in net or a really good goaltending option? And Dallas checks off every single box. Up front, they are loaded with talent. Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, Wyatt Johnston. I think Logan Stankoven could win Rookie of the Year this year. That's my pick for the Calder right now. I think he's a really good young player that will pop immediately. And their defense is really good. Heiskanen's good. Esa Lindell's good. Thomas Harley's good. And Ottinger, I think, will win a Vezina at some point. He's a legitimate stud in net. So they check so many different boxes. I think they end up winning the Central, or certainly they're going to punch a ticket. Edmonton's a good pick. I'm not arguing against that, but I'm going with the Dallas Stars. I'm going to break the mold here at TSN, and I'm taking Dallas Stars.
Jim Nill, sneaky, one of the best GMs of the game, no question about it. Just the team he's put together and the way this team drafts, the way Dallas has drafted over the past 5 to 6 years or so has just been remarkable. The way Bryan Hayes brings it every edition of Hot Takes, that's unbelievable as well. He's the Jim Nill of Toronto sports radio hosts, and he's been doing it since 1983. Thanks, Bryan.
Hot Takes is presented by Harvey's. Customize your burger and get it delivered from our app to your door. Harvey's, it's a beautiful thing.